Another thing I was fascinated with this particular piece, shadows.
In a way,
I was thinking, Tobias, watching this last night and tonight about the idea of remembering a movement sequence, but also being so essential to the progression of the story with what you're doing. And I'm wondering if you are thinking about that, or sort of like what activity comes next.
Well, that grew over time. I think in the beginning that was one of the biggest advantages, that his background was from theater, my background was more movement, acrobatics, not so much dance actually. And I have worked in projects where this sort of mixture went wrong because it just wouldn't match together. But in this case, actually you came from dance. And so the three of us, we sort of, were creating this piece, and everybody sort of brought his best ideas and his best background, or sort of the essential to the table, and everybody being an expert in his sector, sort of.
And so it was a collaboration building on this. I mean, one idea that really is developed so beautifully and takes us in so many different places. So were there some, did you start to discover what kinds of movements made more sense in the world you were creating, and some stuff that sort of didn't read well once it was projected?
Absolutely. A funny episode of that is, I actually used to do a lot of trampolining in my school and in the beginning of my career. And we had, 2 weeks or so with this floor being a trampoline. And we were trying a lot of things, and we screwed furniture into the wall, and we're trying to fool around with that. And after a week or two, we sat there and looked at the video and went like, it's not worth it, it's too complicated. And after 30 seconds...
Yeah, we spent one whole creation period with a huge set, a full room built onto a wall with a trampoline as the floor. And in the corner was this little box, one even smaller than this box, a little box painted all green. And we would do both back and forth, but by the end of the 2-week period, we were sort of going, well, we're getting more stuff interesting out of the little box than we're getting out of this big, awkward, heavy set and trampoline and stuff. So.
It says something really about the importance of time in the research process. That you had some 2-week periods, and then you'd go away and maybe think about, and so come back with, wait, I have this great new idea I just thought of.
Yeah, and it was very ideal for us to work like that, because usually we work for a month or two to create a show, and we had a lot of time. And it was great to have that time and to try things, to scrap things, and rebuild everything every time. It was great.
In total time, we had about 10 weeks of rehearsal, but as it was spread out over a year and a half, and so that allowed a lot of time for reflection, a lot of time for back and forth after a period, because we would sort of come into a new period recapping the old, but having talked a lot, and then we'd finish a session and always do a recap at the end, and then go away with questions and thoughts, and
it's interesting.
So it built in a way that was.
And we work in 2 different countries, so it's funny because I live in Quebec, in Montreal, and after we work together, I go back to my home to something very different.
A life of words instead. Yeah.
Yes, and it's very interesting because we have time, and the distance creates something too.
I was also thinking about how deliberate the size of this room has to be, and how to what your physical reaches, to what the right size container is. How much experimentation did that take?
Not that much, actually, to be honest.
No, I mean, we started smaller, and it got a little bigger, but then it basically grew to be just the right size for the person. And I think the one thing that we found quickly in working was that it had to be a very human size, and that it had to be just a little beyond his reach, but within his reach, so that we always had those 2 ideas playing all the time. Everything was just on that edge.
So when you're in it, do you have any I mean, obviously gravity is real. I know you've been trying to persuade me otherwise for the last
Try
hour.
Try it, go in there.
I'm not going over there, are you kidding? But, I mean, does your sense of, forget the physical labor, I'm going to ask about that in a second, but your sense of orientation of up and down, does it do you get a little sort of screwed with in the head?
I was
over
very
this?
confused in the beginning, obviously, but then over time you get kind of your brain adapts to this new reality, and it becomes a whole movement vocabulary actually that sort of gets incorporated into your body. And every time I see these colors, actually, it's like Pavlov. My brain switches, and
Sometimes you'll lie down in an airport.
or in the metro.
Let me open it up for a couple of your questions or comments, and I'm going to repeat them so everyone can hear.
Yes.
Her first observation is that it starts off in a cute world or a very humorous world, and we're delighted. And then there's a kind of mood shift into some place that's a little bit darker. So first, let's take it from the sort of narrative perspective about that balance of light and dark that's in here.
For me, it was very important to have both sides, and it's a journey into the character. So it's very complex for me, and it's true that it's dramatic too, because he's trapped inside of himself, like the box is himself. So naturally, we go through something more dramatic, but it's fun when we tell a story to start with something very funny and simple, and it changed. Something happened, like in life, something happened, gravity changed, and he discovered something of himself. But it was important for me to work with the two of it, the dramatic part and the more comic part.
And did you, similarly to the character, go through some lighthearted moments and some dark moments?
It's a little bit of a day-to-day thing also. Who was that? No, but what I love about this piece is that I, as a performer, also get to sort of cover all of this material in one night. So I feel always kind of satisfied in the end when I leave the stage after this show. And yes, what I was trying to say before, Mr. Wegner, is that of course there are days where I really dive into or indulge into this fatigue in the end and this sort of madness, because physically I'm really flat towards the end, and other days I have an easier time to get to there, and then it's more funny for me to play that scene.
And that says to me why it's live performance, right? Because
enthusiastic.
that every day your experience in this is going to be different.
Sure.
This is a question about the creative development process and whether you figured it all out here before it ever went over here, or if it shifted back and forth in experimentation.
I think we always work with the camera.
Yeah.
We always have the camera, and but sometimes we forget the camera to work on the character, to work on the story. I remember I didn't know that Tobias was drawing so well. So once I give him, I tell him, let's try to change the room. He's exhausted. He wants to change the room. So what can we do? We have nothing. Maybe we can paint it, or we can draw it. Try to draw something. And so he take the chalk and start drawing. So it was fantastic because he's good. And we look at the screen and we say, okay, if we have to build the room, so try like this, but it's hard to draw like that. But so we always work with the camera, but sometimes we forget it. Sometimes it was back and forth. When we saw the show after, we are more interesting, and we have more interest by the image of it. I don't know if you look. Comment dire? Si on regarde plus,
If you watch one side more than the other.
More than the other one, but I think that we watch more of the video, and this is interesting because he's live there, but we watch more the video. So it's an interesting question about the reality and our l'attraction, our attraction for the movie or for the image of it.